Hi, everyone. Welcome to our fourth book talk for the semester for the year, and I'm impressed with the number of attendees. My name is Hallie Canner. I am the acquisition associate at Hetty Steinberg Library at Stern College, and I'm the co-coordinator of the book talk of the series, together with Shalamas Hess and Svi Erengay. This book talk is being co-sponsored by the Stern College's Education Department's Education Club. And this particular book talk, Chana Stiefel will discuss her work in children's literature and nonfiction. Before we get started, I just have to give a few shout outs here, a few thank yous. First is J.B. Holderness for managing the tech here. Dr. Emily Whitty, she's the clinical assistant professor of education. She helped plan this book talk last spring, which is we originally intended it to be in person. So here, we're at least kind of grateful to Zoom for giving us an alternative. Dr. Miriam Hirsch is the chairperson of the education department. Yael Marcus and Meira Girel, they're co-presidents of the Education Club. Paul Glassman, the director of libraries, for his artistic publicity of the book talks. I hope the ads were lovely. And last but not least, Svi Erengay for helping to get the word out. So there are just a few procedural notes before we begin. During our speaker's presentation, you may submit questions in chat. And we would appreciate if you could identify yourself before posing your questions. So, if you wish to remain anonymous, it's up to you. We'll try to get most of the questions, if not all, at the end of the presentation. And we've muted everyone to avoid background noise. So now I'll get right ahead to cut right to the chase here. We'll give a nice bio. I'm really honored to present Chana Stiefel because she's the first one that who's an actual alumnus at Stern College. It was a decision among us to broaden our book talks to go beyond faculty publications to include anyone who was a student of Yeshiva University. We have a really broad pool of talent. A number have become writers, professionals, all fields. So so hopefully we'll have more just equally inspiring. So I'll give you first a few words about Chana's background. She was the class of 1990. Chana majored in English and art history at Stern College. During journalism school at NYU, New York University, where she earned an MA in science, health and environmental reporting, she started writing for kids. Chana had an internship at Scholastic, Inc., working on Super Science magazine. Later, she became an editor at Scholastic Science World, a magazine geared toward making science news fun and exciting for kids. And she's currently the editor of Our Children, a monthly parenting magazine of the Jewish Standard. Chana has authored more than 25 children's books on a variety of subjects: science, history, zoology, and I'll say she knows how to make technical subjects fun. I guess she combined her degree. It's a great way to combine a liberal arts degree with a science major. She's written books on tsunamis, thunderstorms, quote, animal zombies. These are like creepy blood-sucking animals, and gentle farm animals. You can see it on the screen. There's also Ye Castle Stinketh. This is what it's like to live in a medieval castle. And it's a series on the yucky Middle Ages. I guess it's the ones you don't see in the movies. And there's Fingerprints, Dead People Do Tell Tales. It's like crime forensics. So in a nutshell, again, she knows how to make nonfiction fun. Some of her more recent books are Daddy Depot, It's about a girl who shops at a mega store to pick out the perfect father. And Hannah's most recent achievement is a picture book. My name is Waka Wakalak. I hope I pronounced it. About a cave girl who discovers the power of her hard to pronounce name. And I can relate to that because my Hebrew name is Hayasara, and I'm always getting Chayasara, Hayasara, anything but the proper pronunciation. And if there's the Library of Congress, the guttural CH is usually with an H with a dot underneath, like a diacritical mark. So apparently they have the same problem there. And I just want to say this morning, our software, which is supposed to transcribe messages, like voicemail, did a great job of my name. Issere can some real weird things. So I can really relate to what it's, to not have your name pronounced. And Hannah even says in the Flat River book, she has spent her life searching for a T-shirt with her name on it. And she also loves writing books for kids. To hear how to pronounce her name, go to chanastiefel.com. So soon to be published, coming up in March, is a book, Let Liberty Rise, and how America's school children helped save the Statue of Liberty. That's also coming out from Scholastic. So without further ado, I will introduce Hannah. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Chaya Sarah. I think I got that right. Thank you to Shalamis for inviting me, Shalamis Hess, and to JB for handling all the tech and for the education department, also for sponsoring, and the YU libraries. I feel very at home at YU, and I will show you why in a moment. In addition to putting your questions in the chat, in the spirit of Hanukkah, I'd like to offer 2 giveaways at the end of this talk. So stay on, please, till the end. I will save time for your questions. I have a presentation. The giveaways are a signed copy of my book, Daddy Depot, which I will mail anywhere in the US. And also, because I know there are many aspiring children's book authors in the audience, I'd like to offer a critique of 1 manuscript for 1 person, up to 500 words, sent to me in the next 3 months, so you have time to work on it. So please stay on, and if you're interested in either one of the giveaways, please put your name in the chat and either write book or critique or both. And I believe Shalamis at the end will randomly choose 2 winners. So good luck to everyone. Okay, let's start. Give me 1 second to share this. Okay, here we go. So I'm thrilled to be here. Originally, this talk was supposed to be in March at Stern College. And of course, that was not meant to be, but obviously there are some advantages to Zoom, being that we have a much broader audience tonight. Also, I didn't have to search for parking in New York City. And I know that I think my mom is on from Israel, and if not, this is being recorded, but people are on from all over the world. So this is really thrilling. And if you're there, Mom, hi, Mommy. I will show you now why I am so at home at Yeshiva University. This is my grandfather in the upper corner here, Abe Fryman. He graduated YU high school 93 years ago. He passed away in 1980, but he's began this legacy. This is my father as a young man. He graduated 60 years ago from Yeshiva College and then Albert Einstein. I graduated, believe it or not, 30 years ago. So that is how I have a journey to talk about. It's hard to believe. My son, Judah, is a literal poster child for YU up here in the corner. He was on a billboard for YU on Route 4 in New Jersey. And actually my rabbi took a picture and sent it to me. And if I had seen it while I was driving, I think I would have driven off the road. He graduated in 2019. And my daughter Abby is here. My husband, she is in the infamous class of 2020, and there she is graduating at home. And we're very proud of them. And my husband is a graduate of Albert Einstein as well. So we have a long and cherished history with YU, and I'm very grateful to YU for starting me on my journey. Anyway, given that this is Yeshiva University, 1 second. I want to start with the Devar Torah. I realize that not everyone in the audience knows what a Devar Torah is. A Devar Torah is a lesson from the Hebrew Bible. Yeshiva University is a Jewish university. I will make this short and I will make it universal. This is in honor of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Alav HaShalom, who passed away a month ago. His memorial, his shloshim was on Sunday. It was really beautiful. If you have a chance to watch it, it was really very moving. And I feel a very close personal connection because I have shared his words of Torah with my close friends in my learning group on Shabbos, a group of women that meets every week for a group we call TLC, Torah Learning and Coffee, every Shabbos almost for the last 9.5 years. So this is in memory of Rabbi Sachs. In his book on Genesis, a book called Covenant and Conversation, he asks on Genesis, when God creates man and woman, he says that he created them in his image, in the image of God. But according to the Jewish tradition, God does not have an image. So how could we be created in the image of God if God does not have an image? It's a good question. So some people will say that human beings are created with compassion and kindness, empathy, all the beautiful attributes of God. But Rabbi Sachs points out something that's very relevant to the talk tonight. And that is, if you think about it, God is saying this in the act of creation. He is creating the universe. So what he's saying is that he is creating human beings, men and women, to be creative, that he's giving us this unique talent. Unlike any of the other animals on earth, human beings have the unbelievable capacity to create things, to have an idea that's never been thought of before in the history of the universe, a unique idea in your brain, in your mind, and then make it come to life, make it real. So that could be the creativity of creating a sculpture or painting or writing lines of code. It can be many things. But what is the mechanism that God uses for creation? It says in Genesis, God said, let there be light. He uses words. And I think that as a writer, that really speaks to me, that we can create with words, that we can have a unique idea and then create something that's never been real before. And I think that's very powerful. And also to write for children, I think it's very powerful, but also it shows the responsibility here of writing for children. And one final thing here, during creation, it says that God saw Vayar Elokim et ha'or ki tov. He saw that the light was good. On virtually each day of creation, he says ki tov. It was good. So if God creates something, why does he have to say it was good? Like if God created it, isn't it by nature good? Why would he have to say that? And I think the answer, according to Rabbi Sachs, is that it's giving us a message that we are here to uplift each other. And I think that if any of us, any of you, join the Kidlit, the children's literature community, you will find that it is good and supportive, that is constantly, everyone is uplifting each other. I think that the published authors in this group can attest to that, that it's the most supportive group of people you'll ever meet. When I went to my very first conference of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, I was extremely nervous and I thought it would be extremely competitive. That here are all these, hundreds of children's authors trying to get published and trying to get the attention of all these agents and editors. And I thought it'd be very cutthroat. But instead, they gave me a badge with my name on it, spelled correctly, and they had a little heart on it, that like sparkly red heart. I was a little mortified, but what it meant was that I was a newbie and that everyone who saw me with that heart sticker and all the other people who were new should be welcomed. At that conference, I met my critique partner and one of my closest friends, Donna Cangelosi. I met my first agent at that conference. I made lots and lots of friends who we're still friendly with friends today. And when children's authors get together or where we share groups, we're always trying to encourage each other and lift each other up. So I'm going to share my journey, and I hope that there's a very broad audience here tonight that I know. There are people who are students, undergrads, there are people who are, in their second or third career, there are people who are hoping to be published, there are people who are just here for fun. I want to try to share my journey and hopefully there'll be takeaways. It's not just about me talking about myself all night. I'm hoping there's a takeaway for everyone here. So I'm going to try to, reach a lot of different people. If I don't answer your questions in my talk, again, please ask. Okay, so I grew up in Miami. That's me in first grade. I'm wearing, I think, my birthday crown from when I turned 6. I love growing up in Florida. My parents raised us to love Torah, to love Judaism, to love family, also to love nature. We grew up next to a canal. We had a canoe. We would go canoeing and looking for birds and all kinds of funny creatures. And we would go down to the Everglades and go on swamp tramps where we would roll up our jeans and walk in the swamp looking for wildlife. And when we weren't going to Israel to visit my bubby, my mom's mom, we would be going to the Smoky Mountains National Park or out west to the national parks. And they instilled in us this wonder and appreciation for the beautiful world that we live in and for nature. And you'll see how that plays out in my writing later on. This picture of these girls, that's me in the very fashionable dress with the red vest attached and the knee highs and clogs. Not just making a fashion statement here. That was my entire class in my Jewish day school in Miami. And the tall woman was my teacher, Mrs. Singer. For everyone here from the education department, I want you to know that what you do matters, and that my teacher, Mrs. Singer, made me love writing and encouraged me all along. And I still think of her. And I just tried to reach out to her this week on Facebook. I'm trying to connect with her. So if you're out there, Mrs. Singer, I just want you to know that I became an author. So I loved writing from a young age. My parents encouraged our creativity. We were 4 kids. And my father, if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see a video of my dad building sculptures in Israel on his mountaintop now, which is remarkable. He's an artist. And I had many experiences of creating art with him throughout my life. And my mom is a lifelong teacher, and she instilled in us a love of reading. So I can remember the books sitting on her lap, like reading Blueberries for Sal as a young child, or The Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Baisley Frankweiler. These are the books that I just loved as a child. And I don't think I ever as a child could have imagined that I would be writing books. But it certainly had a big influence on me. So maybe in the chat, if you guys want to share what some of your favorite books are, and that ones that influenced your life, that would be great. I went off after high school. I went to the Hebrew Academy and then went off to Israel for a gap year. And throughout high school and then beyond, I was always looking for ways to publish. And in Israel, I went to a school called Mechala, which is a Jerusalem college. Excuse me. And I found that they had a printing press there. So I created a newsletter for parents for the students studying abroad. It was pre-internet, believe it or not. And we printed a newsletter and sent it home. Then I went off to Stern and I majored in English and art history. I worked on student publications. And one of the remarkable things about Stern is they had a wonderful career office where they connected students with whatever internships you were interested in. And I was very fortunate. Throughout college, I thought I was going to go to law school. I thought maybe because of the research and the writing, I wasn't sure exactly, but I was pre-law. And so I worked in a law firm, but I also worked in a medical PR firm and learned science writing, and just the nuts and bolts of science writing. And while I was there, someone said, "Why are you going to law school? Maybe you want to try to apply to this NYU journalism program in science, health, and environmental reporting." So I literally had 2 acceptances in my hands, and I had to choose one. So this is where my friend Shira Dubitsky, who's a psychologist, says to her kids, take the road with the most exit ramps, meaning make a decision you can always get off. But I would like to change this a little bit and say, well, maybe more the most off ramps and the most on ramps. And also try to find something, I'm speaking to the undergrads now, or if you're thinking of changing careers, do what you love what you do. And this is what the real road of publishing looks like. This is an actual photo of publishing. There are a lot of ups and downs. There are a lot of twists and turns. And there are a lot of highs and there are a lot of low lows. I know that the published authors in the group here can attest. There's a lot of rejection. You'll send off your manuscript and you won't hear back for months. You might get tons of rejections, but even the best authors get, I've heard J.K. Rowling had 100 rejections for Harry Potter. Stephen King was rejected. So you really just have to enjoy the thrill ride because it can be extremely thrilling. That's a picture of me going on a ride with my son when he was a little boy. So face your fears. The last time I listened to my kids about facing my fears, I ended up with a concussion on a roller coaster. Okay, so NYU, which I loved, it was a 2-year master's program, was down the block from a publishing company called Scholastic. I hadn't really thought about writing for kids yet, but again, I took an internship and I worked in a magazine called Super Science, which then became a job. another magazine, Scholastic. I think they still have many, many magazines. At the time, they had about 30 classroom magazines. This one was Science World. It came out bi-weekly, and the mission was to make science fun and interesting for kids. And the woman with the glasses here, her name is Karen McNulty. She was my mentor. And this were other staff members. And this is a recent photo, not 2 years ago, when you were able to get together in coffee shops. And we have all stayed in touch with each other. But Karen really about science writing for children, and it's not about watering down the science at all. It's relevant and fun and engaging and instilling in kids that wonder. And it was the same kind of thing that I experienced as a child with my parents, of just appreciating the natural world. So these are some of the covers of articles that I worked on at Scholastic, and really truly enjoyed it. And again, like, the connections that you make in life are very valuable, because a lot of my work since then, it all comes back to Scholastic. And I'll tell you a little bit more on how. So these are some of my books that after Scholastic, I basically I had moved from New York to Connecticut. My husband and I had 2 kids. We moved to Teaneck, New Jersey. And then a new editor started at the magazine. And he realized that I had been working from home, which really prepared me for COVID days. But he wanted me to come back full time in the office. And he said, you could either come back full time or you could freelance. So I gave it some thought, and I made a quality of life decision, and I decided I was going to freelance. So can you hear me? Yeah, we're good?
Now I
Okay.
can, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Somehow I got muted. Okay, sorry. So an editor reached out to me and asked if I wanted to write a book, and the book would be about the topic of wind. And I thought about it, and wind did not seem so interesting. It's air that moves. But then I thought about it, and I realized, well, humans do interesting things with wind. We harness wind to sail boats and sail across the ocean and become explorers, or we use wind power to generate energy, or there's just so many things. Weather balloons. So I ended up saying yes to this book, and this is it. It's called Wind from a Whisper to a Howl. It's a tiny little paperback book, but this really started me on my journey, because I really enjoyed the research and the writing, and that started me on my journey of writing books for kids. As you can see, a lot of my early books were science related. I was doing tons of natural disaster books. An editor. So these are smaller publishers. One of the reasons I'm showing you this is because I want to show you that there's a difference between like educational publishers and trade publishers. So the educational market mostly sells to libraries and schools, and they're very important books, and they sell through catalogs. And a lot of this is work for hire, meaning they'll pay you one lump sum, and you write these books, and they're pretty fast turnaround relative to the trade industry. And then you're done. It's freelance projects. Some of them I got a small advance and royalties, and so every few months I get a nice little surprise check in the mail, which is exciting. And a few of them are sold in brick and mortar bookstores, if you can remember those. But by and large, they're sold to school library and the library collection. These books were assigned to me by editors. They weren't me saying, oh, I must write 3 books on the yucky Middle Ages. An editor basically contacted me from a book called Enslow, and we would love 3 books on the yucky Middle Ages. Would you like to write them? And I said, yes, I would, even though I knew very little about the yucky Middle Ages, or I knew about Maimonides, but you know what I'm saying? Like I just wanted to explore and enjoy, and I loved writing these books. It was just how yucky it was to live in a castle, and the yucky food of the Middle Ages, and how yucky it was to be a knight. And I learned so much. One of the things I love about this job is the diversity, the different topics that I get to explore all the time. And my family kind of makes fun of me because of things like when I'm exploring thunderstorms, no one's allowed to take a shower during a storm, things like that. But it's just a wonderful thing to be able to do. In terms of educational publishing, it's a great place to start, because you can pitch directly to editors. You don't necessarily need an agent, and it's great to build a body of work and a portfolio. And it's really fun. So, if that's something someone wants to consider, I recommend it. Okay. Oops. Am I not asking here? There we go. Okay, so this was shared with me from a writer friend who might be in the audience, Maish Goldish. A freelance writer is a person who is paid per piece, per word, or perhaps. So in the writing world, people don't like you to do work for free because it devalues everyone else's work. So the thing is that freelance rates have not really gone up in the last several years, like 20 years or something, unless you're writing for a major, national or international publication. But very often people's blogs are, written for free and they're just shared. So sometimes it's worth it to get in print, because you need to build credentials for yourself if you're going to get published. And so you can say, I was published in this magazine or this newspaper. And it's sometimes worth doing those freelance jobs or doing internships. I just took an intern on, I don't know if she's on now, but I took an intern on at my job at the Jewish Standard at Our Children. I feel like these are, someday someone's going to ask you what you did during COVID, and you'll have some articles to show for. So I think those are very worthwhile opportunities. Okay, and then something happened. So around 2007, maybe 2008, my daughter Maya was 7 years old, and I was putting her to sleep, and she was mad at my husband. She was mad at her dad. And we made a joke that we would return him to the daddy store and go shopping for a new dad. And suddenly I had, ding, an idea for a picture book. And I ran downstairs and I started writing. And that is how Daddy Depot came about, based on a funny bedtime story. I want you to know it took 8 years from the time I started writing until the time it was published in 2017. So Maya was already, much older. But I will talk a little bit more about the making of Daddy Depot. But these are some of my more current books. Waka Wakalach, as Chaya Sarah mentioned, is about a cave girl who has a hard to pronounce name. It's semi-autobiographical because, as you said, I could never find a t-shirt with my name on it. It was originally a book about a girl named Chana who wanted to change her name to Sue. People always mangle my name. They call me Chana, Kahana, China, all those names. But the version of the book, my critique partner said, oh, well, what was happening was that Chana's grandmother was explaining that she had a great grandmother who was her namesake, and so she should keep her name. But really, in today's writing and literature, children should be empowered to solve their own problems. So I realized, and my agent at the time helped me realize, that if I put my character in a new setting, things I can solve different problems. And so I not only put her in a new setting, but I put her in a new era. And I created this Neanderthal family that, and a character named Waka Wakalach, and she was able to solve her own problem. But really, Waka Wakalach is me. It was just a really fun book to work on. And it's about the power of our names and being proud of our names. I've continued to write books about nature and animals. So this is Animal Zombies. And it's from National Geographic. It was a book that I pitched to them. And the photography is astounding in this book. I had seen newspaper articles in the New York Times about animal zombies, which are creatures that take over the brains of other creatures and have them do their bidding. For instance, on the cover is a ladybug, and a wasp has laid an egg inside the ladybug that is growing into a larva. So I thought about, well, that's so interesting. What other types of animal monsters are there? And I realized that there are lots of animal vampires, which are animals that suck blood, like bats and leeches and mosquitoes. And then there are creatures of the night and creatures of the deep, and even aliens, like the creatures that invade our own bodies. So I put it all together and sent a manuscript off to National Geographic, and here's my book. So that's lots of fun. And I like to talk to kids about the research involved there. And then I'm super excited that my next book, Let Liberty Rise, is coming out in March. And this is coming out from Scholastic. The others are different publishers. Daddy Depot is Macmillan, and My Name is Waka Wakalach is Houghton Mifflin. So I've been around the block, but I come home to Scholastic. So my editor, Diane Hess at Scholastic, love this manuscript. It's the true story of the Statue of Liberty. So all of us, or many of us, know that the Statue of Liberty was a gift from France to celebrate America's 100th birthday. But what many people don't know is that when the Statue of Liberty arrived in 350 pieces and over 200 crates, America didn't want it. And it sat on Liberty Island, which is then called Bedloe's Island, in the rain for a long time, because America didn't want to pay $100,000 to build the pedestal for the statue to stand. But a man named Joseph Pulitzer, who was a Jewish Hungarian immigrant who owned the New York World newspaper, said that if anyone would give a penny for the pedestal, he would print their name in his newspaper. So school children sent in their hard-earned pennies to build the statue. And that is why we have the Statue of Liberty today. So I love that story because it's the first crowdsourcing campaign, and it's a story about tzedakah and working together for a cause. And it's about immigration, and it's about liberty. And what could be more important than that? So my editor, Diane, and I have worked really hard on this book, and the illustrations by Chuck Ronick are just beautiful. He did a great job. So I can't wait to share it with you coming up in March. And I have to figure out how to launch a book during a pandemic. So I'm open to ideas if anyone wants to share later. Okay, so this is the mission of writing for children today. So a lot of children who love reading can find comfort in books, and they use books as escape. But there's another piece of that writers should be mindful of. Okay, and this is from an educator, an African-American educator named Radine Sims Bishop. Windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. I'm going to read this to you. Books are sometimes windows, offering views of worlds that may be real or imagined, familiar or strange. These windows are also sliding glass doors, and readers have only to walk through in imagination to become part of whatever world has been created and recreated by the author. When lighting conditions are just right, however, a window can also be a mirror. Literature transforms human experience and reflects it back to us. And in that reflection, we could see our own lives and experiences as part of the larger human experience. Reading then becomes a means of self-affirmation, and readers often seek their mirrors in books. So I love this for many reasons, because, the idea of a window, that books are windows, and you can explore the entire world through books, is wonderful. That you can step into that world while you're reading and then also reflect back on yourself. These are all beautiful images of what books can be. Related to this is the concept of own voices, that there's a large movement in children's literature today to be much more diverse. And there's room at the table for everyone, and that children should be able to see themselves in books, to be able to imagine what they can become. So we as authors should consider writing from our own voices and not appropriating the voices of other cultures. And so Ezra Hyland says, humans don't make our stories, it's stories that make us human. It's not until we know the stories of each other that we embrace our humanity. When I know the stories of my people and my culture, that's when I become human myself. So this really speaks to me. These are some of the beautiful books I've read recently, and they're very multicultural, they're very diverse. For those of the education majors in the room right now, I encourage you, and all the parents and librarians, I encourage you to diversify your libraries, read broadly, read from other cultures. It will enrich your life. It will make us all more empathetic, more humane. And these are some of my favorite authors, so you can definitely screenshot this and explore on your own some of these beautiful, beautiful books. And I've thought about own voices a lot lately because I've been connecting much more to writing about Judaism, which I haven't done before. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So what is a picture book? So this is really the craft. This is the hard work of writing a picture book. It looks easy, or the best authors, I should say, make it look easy, but it is hard work. And these are some of the questions, and I wish I could answer them all for you, but I can't. But these are some of the questions that you writers should be thinking about. And if this looks to you something like one of your literature courses, well, guess what? It is, because writing for children is serious work. And if you treat it like work, you will succeed. These are the things that the authors here, published authors, all explore and learn about. And when I wrote my first draft of Daddy Depot, when I went downstairs that night after putting my daughter to bed, I didn't know the first thing about writing a picture book. It says, how many pages should a picture book be? How many words? I wrote 1,500 words. They were in rhyme. I had no main character. It didn't have a story arc. It was a mess. Okay, but I started. It was my sloppy copy. It was my crappy first draft. Okay, and but you have to start somewhere. But it was my learning book. It was the book where I learned, and I started to take it seriously. And I listened to webinars. On the next slide, I'm going to give you lots of resources. But I'll just give you an example. When we say, like, what are story structures? What I basically learned was, that the story has to have a character, and you can definitely you can experiment with different things, but it's worth learning the basics first. Should it rhyme is a great question. My book rhymed, and it was a terrible rhyme. And I learned that I'm not a rhymer, but I am collaborating with one of my friends, Andrea, who is, I hope she's here still. She is a rhymer. And so we're collaborating because I envisioned a book that I really wanted to write, and I envisioned it in rhyme. So I'm giving her the material, and she's putting it in rhyme because it has to be perfect rhythm. Just because Dr. Seuss is in rhyme doesn't mean your book should be. And if you read books today, you'll see that they really aren't rhyming. So if you want to take apart Daddy Depot for a minute, I'm not going to read it to you, but I just want to show you it's a little more complex than it might seem. Okay, so it really is the hero's journey. It's a classic narrative structure. Okay, here we have this imperfect hero, this little girl, Lizzie, and she's a feisty little girl, and she really just wants her dad's attention. But he's watching. She's trying to show him her ballet twirls, but he's watching too much football, and he tells terrible jokes and embarrasses her in front of her friends. And then he falls asleep in her bed, and he's snoring. Well, then something magical happens, and she sees an ad. Come to the Daddy Depot, the dad mega store. From acrobats to zookeepers, we have the perfect dad for you. Exchange your old dad for a brand new one today. Well, Lizzie ends up going on a quest. For those of you who studied the hero's journey, she goes on a quest. She drags her dad to the Daddy Depot. And for kids who live in suburbia, they will recognize the Daddy Depot. There's little Lizzie, and this is the gigantic mega store. And she goes searching for a dad, right? This is her journey. And she tries out different dads. There's Rocker Dad, and there's Astro Dad, and there is Chef Dad, but none of them seem to fill her needs. And then she sees that she has to climb a mountain. She actually has to go up to the top shelf because up there is the clearance. And guess what's up there in the clearance? It's a dad party. So this is a little homage to, if you're fans of Go Dog Go and P.D. Eastman. To the tree, up, up, up. He went to the top of the tree, and there was the dog party. I see Diane Fogel nodding. So yeah, so that was my dad party, is based on that. And there are all kinds of dads, and kids love looking at the different kinds of dads. But here our hero, she hasn't found resolution yet. And she's searching the crowd, and not a single dad noticed until, except one dad over by the Punch and Chips, who was waving his arms and doing a funky chicken touchdown dance. Lizzie's heart did a loop-de-loop. Only one dad in the entire universe danced like that. And of course, it was her own dad. And it's a story about unconditional love, because dad gets a lifetime guarantee stamp. So there is resolution at the end, and it's a book that has many layers. It's much more complex than you think. Did I lose my screen? Hold on. Okay, a little more complex than you originally thought, right? But it took me years and years to figure that out. And then I finally brought it to a conference when I felt confident about the story, and that I could pitch it in such a way that it could work on different levels of, imperfect parents, unconditional love, and that our consumer culture, where almost everything could be returned. And that was the book that got me an agent and a publishing contract. Okay, so if you're wondering, okay, well, how do I learn this? Well, there's lots and lots and lots of ways. These are some resources that could help. There's an author named Tara Lazar who has a wonderful blog, and I'll talk to her about her more in a second. But go to taralazar.com. You can definitely screenshot this. Another author who's very funny, Josh Funk. He has great resources for writers, especially writers starting out on his page, joshfunkbooks.com. There's an author and educator, Harold Underdown, who wrote a book called The Complete Idiot's Guide to Publishing Children's Books. For nonfiction, the go-to person is Melissa Stewart. She was a colleague of another student in my class at NYU, and she went off to publish, I think, 150 children's books, nonfiction. And she writes beautifully. And she has analyzed nonfiction in such a way that categorized narrative nonfiction and expository nonfiction, informational text. And it's really worth looking up both her blog, but following her because she has a new book out about writing nonfiction. And my blog right now, Kidlit Takeaways, or just go to chanastiefel.com and you'll see, click on my blog, has a lot of pointers for getting started if you choose to go down this crazy publishing journey. Okay, and here are some tips for you. Okay, this is a lot, but I'm gonna go through the list. So join the first step, and this is what Melissa told me when I was starting to write fiction, was join scbwi.org, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I think annual membership is under $100. It is money well spent. It is your way of connecting with children's authors and illustrators around the world. They have chapters in every region of the United States. They have 2 annual conferences, one in LA, one in New York. During COVID, they've had remarkable webinars, and their summer conference and their winter conference were online, and it just made it so much more accessible. It's a great way to meet editors and agents. It is a great way to find a critique group, which is the next thing. And also when you join, you get something called The Book, which is a great resource for everything you need to know about children's writing. So there's every reason in the world to start with scbwi.org. Find a critique group. So if you've written for children, you need to share your manuscript with someone who you're not related to. Okay, and beyond also your best friends, you need to find a group of other like-minded people who share your passion for writing for children and want to improve their craft. I've been in a few different critique groups. I'm in a group now of 5 or 6 lovely, lovely women. And we are on Facebook, and basically we have a private group and we share manuscripts. Each one can share 1 manuscript a month. And sometimes it's just a revision of a previous manuscript, and we all critique each other's work. And it takes time, but it's so worth it. Some critique groups meet in person, some meet online. Some never meet, but they communicate with each other and share manuscripts. Read broadly in your genre. I can't emphasize this enough. If you're writing for children, you need to be reading for children. And that means going to the library or now requesting books and picking up curbside, buying books, whatever it is. You just need to have stacks and stacks and stacks of books. When I go to the Teaneck library now, I take out stacks of picture books, and I think by this time they know it's not for my children, it's for me. You need to really understand what's being published now. And it's not about trends, because by the time, if you write to a trend, by the time you get published, that trend is over. It takes at least 2 to 4 years in trade publishing to have your book go from acceptance to publication. So sometimes it takes longer. So really just know what's being published and see what you like and see where you see yourself. Research agents and editors. So this is a big one. I think the question on a lot of people's mind is, do I need an agent? So if you see yourself writing as a career, then yes, I would say short answer, you do need an agent. The smaller publishers, like I said, some of them will accept public submissions for unagented authors, but agents help you develop your career. They help open doors by getting your manuscripts read. They help you, if they're editorial, they'll help you write and revise your manuscripts. They will help you with your contracts, which not a lot of people have those skills. So they will get you a better deal. And they, you would never pay an agent up front. They get paid percentage, but very, very important and worthwhile. If there's time at the end, I'll explain to you how I'm on my second agent, and I adore her, and I can explain later. And so how do you research agents? So there are many ways. One is the book that I mentioned from SCBWI. There is a children's and writers illustrator book called The Children's Writers and Illustrators Market, and I think is updated annually. There's something called the manuscript wish list. I think it's a website, and also a hashtag manuscript wish list, I think is MSWL. And where agents and editors will write, oh, I'm looking for this. So if you happen to be writing, SOGs, that's what they're looking for. Go to conferences and webinars and workshops. Those are great ways to meet agents and editors face to face and have them critique your work. You could also, if you write, Google children's literary agent, and your list will come up. You want to be very current with this because they move houses a lot, and also their submission guidelines change. So you want to be sure that when you submit, you're following those guidelines closely, because you don't want to ever give them an opportunity, a reason to reject you just because you didn't realize that they were not accepting nonfiction right now or something like that. You want to be very targeted. And we can go into this more if you like. Another thing is to look at authors who you like and see who represents them, and then research that agent and that agency. And there's also an association of authors representatives. It's aaronline.org, and you can try that as well. Okay, tush and share. Basic rule: books do not write themselves. If you're not sitting and writing, you should try to write every day if you can. At least a little bit every day. Have your writing rituals, get your tea, sit down. The author Judy Blume always says that she used to have a bracelet that she would put on, and that when her bracelet was on, that was writing time. But she's Judy Blume. So writing is revising. So I have this little cute art here from Jarrett Lerner. He's an author illustrator. If you saw Daddy Depot, I maybe went through 50, maybe 100 drafts for that book and my other books as well. Writing is revising. Get that first draft on paper and then get to work on revising it, because you need to improve and improve and improve on it to get it right. Let Liberty Rise, my current book, I can't even count the number of times I revised that manuscript up till the bitter end. Connect with other writers, like I said, critique groups, but also just you'll need support. I want to mention some of these organizations, which are fabulous, and groups. The 12 by 12 challenge is run by a woman named Julie Hedlund. You pay. It starts in January. She said you could go online now and sign up to get an email when they're starting for the year. There's 2 levels. Basically, the challenge is to write 12 books in 12 months. Okay, tall order. Not everybody meets that goal, but there's a lot of incentive and there's a lot of encouragement along the way. And there are monthly webinars. There are critique ninjas that come and check your work. There's a lot of support. You can always ask your questions there. And it's incredibly encouraging. And I love that group. I've had a lot of success because of that group. Story Storm. So where do ideas come from? So I mentioned Tara Lazar earlier. So Tara Lazar years ago started something called Pi Bo Idmo, which is Picture Book Idea Month. And then she, thank God, changed the name to Story Storm, which is a lot easier to remember. And what happens is in the month of January, you sign up for this blog. Check it out now. You could sign up either through Tara's blog or on Facebook. And probably sign up will happen at the end of this month. You get a daily blog post from different authors. I will be one of them this January, giving you an insight into how we come up with ideas. And the challenge is to come up with an idea a day through the month of January. And that should give you a storehouse full of ideas to write your 12 by 12 books. But so many of my ideas, one pointer is when you do come up with a picture book idea, start a page on your phone or in a notebook and write it down immediately, because it will pass. And you will have these lists of books that you can always turn to. And some of them you won't even understand what you wrote down, but it's worth writing down anyway. And there are lots of groups within groups. Jewish Kidlit Mavens. I mentioned that earlier that I'm much more interested now in writing about my own Jewish heritage and books that relate to Judaism. So I joined a group called Jewish Kidlit Mavens. It's on Facebook. And it's Jewish authors sharing their knowledge about writing Jewish topics. Kidlit 411 is just what it sounds like. It's everything you need to know about Kidlit. It's a website and blog. The Highlights Foundation, if you remember the Highlights magazine from when you were a kid, Highlights has a retreat in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, and their sessions are supposed to be wonderful. Their retreats are wonderful. I was supposed to go to one in April. It didn't happen. So I'm hopeful I'll go when all this is over, but it's supposed to be remarkable. Book Meshugana is another Jewish group. I'm a member of this one. It's 18 Jewish women sharing sharing Jewish books, but also educational materials. So it's great for the educators in this group because you can go online and get educator guides for lots of wonderful Jewish books. It's promoting reading. And finally, and then I'm going to move to questions. Actually, I want to tell you what's coming up, but I think we have a few more minutes. Yeah. Okay. So query. So how do you get to agents and editors? You have to write a query letter. Okay. You have to pitch your story. And that itself is an art. So I'm just going to give you a little recipe for writing a query letter, and that is the hook, the book, and the cook. So the hook is, how do you hook the reader of this, the agent or the editor that you are submitting to? And you want to give them a little, exciting hook to your book, that pitch. Then the book. The book is a description of your book and a paragraph. And then the cook, that's you, that's the writer. And that's where all that freelance work and all those other things, all your credentials come up, because you want to tell them, oh, I wrote for this publication and I have this educational book under my belt, and I was editor of this paper, and so on and so forth. I'm a librarian, and this is my first picture book and I'm so excited. So that's basic query writing. I would definitely Google how to write a query letter before sending anything out. Okay, what's next? This is my final slide, but I'm very excited to share this with you. So after Let Liberty Rise, I still have a few more books coming up. So I mentioned that I'm more interested in writing about Jewish things. A few years ago, I think it's now 3.5 years ago, I saw the obituary in the New York Times of Yafa Eliach, Alaha Shalom. Yafa Eliach was a Jewish historian. And when I read her obituary, I had tears in my eyes and I said, I have to share her story. It's remarkable. She was a survivor of a village called Aishashak that was nearly completely destroyed. And she was a little girl at the time. And her mother and her grandmother had been the town photographers. She eventually became a Jewish historian, and Jimmy Carter at the time was building the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., and asked her to create an exhibit. And she didn't want to show images of death and dying in the Holocaust. She wanted to celebrate the life that people lived and create empathy. And she wanted to rebuild her village in stories and pictures. So she spent 17 years of her life going to 5 continents, tracing down the people, the photographs that her grandmother and her mother had taken, that people from the village had sent to their family members around the world, and get their stories. And she created a book called The Tower of Life, or the book is called The Tower of Life. And it's about 800 pages. I'm sorry, she created The Tower of Life. The book is coming to me. Anyway, when I read this, I knew I had to write about her, but I also had to find her family so that I could get their permission to write about her. And guess what? Her daughter is a professor, Smaja Rosenzweig at Stern College. And I happened to have connected with her, and we had a beautiful talk, and she gave me permission to write her mother's story. My editor, Diane Hess at Scholastic, her father, so Yafa Eliach created the Tower of Life in the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. It's 3 stories high. If you see this image, it probably looks familiar to you. Diane Hess's father was a survivor who was a docent at the museum. So all of these things connected. It's a remarkable story. We just found an illustrator for it, and I'm very excited to share it. When I got word that this would be published, I was in tears. It is so important to share these stories with the world, and keep her memory and the memory of those perished alive. Switching gears entirely, I'm still also writing fiction, and some people want to know, well, are editors acquiring work during COVID? So luckily for me, yes. In February, I had the flu. I think it was the flu, maybe it was COVID, it was something nasty. In February, I was in bed. I got an email from my editor saying, I'm sorry, from my agent saying, does anyone have a book about an avocado? I have an editor who wants a book about an avocado. And I was sick in bed and I said, I don't have a book about an avocado, but I could write one. And I took out a notebook and I started scribbling notes. And a funny punny book about an avocado who had a pit in her stomach. And then I discovered why she had a pit in her stomach. It's because she was at the farmer's market and she wanted to find out what made her special. She wanted to be today's special. So I went through a bunch of revisions and I got a deal from HarperCollins. That is not the official illustration book. We're still looking for an illustrator, but so that's exciting. So Bravo Avocado will be coming out in 2022. And then super, super, super excited to share that hopefully signing a contract very, very soon for my next book, which is in collaboration with my husband, Larry Stiefel. So Larry is a pediatrician, and he's also known as the Maggid of Bergenfield. He wrote hundreds of stories, of Parsha stories and Jewish stories and holiday stories. And one of the stories I loved so much that I turned it into a picture book. And I sent it to my agent, who then sent it out to publishers. And we have an offer on a Hanukkah book, which is so appropriate for this week. So I'm excited that hopefully that will be coming out in 2022. It's a charming, funny story, which I hope to share with you all soon. And that is my presentation. Please follow me if you have questions. You can always follow up. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, which is totally too much social media. You could also reach me through my website, chanastiefel.com. And now I'm ready to take your questions. I don't know if we should do giveaways first or questions, whatever you like.
Okay, we're gonna do the giveaway first. By the way, thank you very much. Wonderful talk here. We are going to go past 8:30 for, if anybody wants to stay for a little while and ask questions, please do. But meanwhile, we'll turn the mic, so to speak, over to Shalabis. Has my partner in crime here, so she'll do the any giveaways or whatever it was. Yeah, you arranged. Okay.
First, Lamis.
That is my favorite book.
Thank you.
I read that book and I can't wait to read the others. And I'm a big fan of the Maggid of Bergenfield as well. So I live in Teaneck. I just want to get to that drawing, that virtual drawing, because I know you're waiting with bated breath. So I try to be fair. I'm offering the book to Yael Marcus, one of the co-presidents of the Education Club. And the critique to Basia Goldstein. Did I pronounce that correctly? So I hope you're both here.
Yes, Ms. Lamis, if you can connect me by email, I'll get their information.
Okay, very good. Very good.
Yeah, sorry if I went over on the time. So I'd love to take a few questions. I'm happy to stick around.
Okay.
Okay. Just a few, by the way, her Hannah's books are available on Amazon. I guess you just look up the author. I probably just listed everything.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to mention that I will be sending everybody an email with all the links that were brought up, the tips, the resources, the link to Hannah's website, all the goodies. You will get this. You don't have to scribble it all down, take notes. You're going to get it, and you can feel free to email with questions. Okay.
Some people are asking for a critique. I don't know what exactly they mean. I mean, I think that you gave a very good overview of the children's book.
People are wondering if I could critique work. I would say.
Yeah. Those were the ones that when they asked for the book or the critique for the drawing. So those, anytime they say critique a book, that's not a question. It's only the question, the comments.
Critique everyone's work. I just can't.
Oh, here's an interesting. Okay, here's an interesting question. Are you ever worried? This is from Hannah Majewski. Are you ever worried that someone in the critique group that you join might, like steal your ideas or words? It's always like,
I mean, there's an implicit trust in a critique group. No one would ever do that in a critique group. Someone else raised it as a question of like, when you send it off to an agent or a publisher, do you have to copyright your work first? So I think there's like an implicit trust that, so no one, in this field, if publishers were stealing people's work, they wouldn't be in business. And then I did hear a story recently that someone was pretty sure that an agent took her idea and gave it to another author. And I just thought that was awful. I've never copyrighted my work. I don't I don't worry about that. I feel like sometimes you'll see that you're writing a book about a unicorn, and all of a sudden there's 20 unicorn books out, and that's just a weird phenomenon. But it's not that anyone's stealing anyone's work; it's that unicorns are really popular.
Mhm.
Um, Lately, there are books about characters that are potatoes. I don't know why. Are potatoes very popular? No one's stealing ideas. It's just
Yeah.
something that happens. There's porcupine books coming out. I can't really explain why that is. But no, I don't personally worry, and I trust my critique partners 1,000%. They wouldn't be my critique partners if I didn't trust them.
Okay. Here's another question from Muna Aspir. Is it possible for a teenager to have their work published before going to college or having any writing background?
Oh, such a great question. So I think there's publishing and there's self-publishing. Um,
Yeah.
there are some really remarkable teenagers out there, and I think if you Google, you'll find some of their books that are published. Some of them happen to be related to celebrities. Um, some of them write it, with their celebrity parents, but if the questioner is not, it can happen. It really depends on the book. I know that my agent once represented a teenager. She was a girl who had, unfortunately, I think she was born with a defect that she was missing an arm. And then she created an invention that was really remarkable and wrote a book about it. Um, it's possible. It really depends on the quality of the work. And if you can't get traditionally published, then maybe something you want to look into is self-publishing. I'm not an expert on self-publishing, but if it's, you have to think of what your goals are. If you want to just have a book that's published that you could share with your family, then self-publishing might be the way to go. For other people who want to self-publish, I can't speak to self-publishing. I know that it's an investment of money and time because you're going to have to market your own book yourself, and that's a ton of work. But for kids, I know someone recently sent me, maybe it's the person asking their son's work, and I keep meaning to get to it. I encourage all children to keep writing, and writing for writing's sake is something important in itself. So you could definitely publish for yourself and your family and start there and see where it takes you. But keep
Yeah.
writing.
Here's another one, maybe it's kind of even related. It's from Sam F. Hi, he says, I recently self-published a book through Amazon. What are some good ways to market it or get it in front of agents? Thanks.
Oh, okay. So marketing is tough. You need to get a real platform on social media. And I don't know, Sam, but you have to have like a real solid social media following. That would be the best way to market, probably. I know some people do go bookstore to bookstore trying to sell their self-published books. There's a wonderful author. He writes in verse, Kwame Alexander. He now has his own imprint, and I love all of his books. And almost all of his original books were self-published at first, and then he had a breakthrough book called Countdown. So he's remarkable, and he self-published first. It's hard to get your name out there. I mean, I guess I would reach out to local publishers, see if you could, local media, and see if you can get some press. But really, networking with other authors, getting an agent for a book that's self-published. Agents really want to see what you're writing now for the future, not what you've published already. And if your sales of your self-published book weren't great, an agent might not be excited about that. They would want to see like really great track record in order to take you on. I would think about the next book and then say that I have this self-published book, I'm writing this, would you consider this? That's probably what I would do.
And here's a question from Emily Whitty. What advice do you have for people who find it challenging to revise or let go of their work and have other people give input? I was going to ask that also, by the way, because I'm also my other job. I'm an editor, so I am always like editing, so I know what it's like.
Sometimes they call it improvisation. Yeah, sometimes you have to kill your darlings. It's really hard. I would give it time. My method is when I give my work to my critique group, I print out a clean copy. I put all their comments in writing on the manuscript, all of them. And then I see which ones I speak to me and which ones don't. And sometimes it might be all of them, and sometimes it might be some of them, it might be none of them. But sometimes I'll have this idea. Sometimes I'll put it aside. Giving it time is a really great way. And then usually, I mean, I love to walk and I love to swim. And usually during one of those two things, or the shower, ding, an idea will come into my head. It's about not being, if a lot of people are saying the same thing about your work, then you should pay attention. it was really hard to let go of my book. In Waka Waka, I first wrote a draft about a girl named Chana. It was called That's Not My Name. I really wanted to be Chana, but when I realized that I had so many more opportunities for this cave girl, that's when I just threw out Chana and started a whole new draft and new manuscript, and then it flowed. So sometimes you just have to be brave, and you can always go back to the original, but keep going.
Okay, here's one from Miriam Rosenblut. It's awesome hearing about religious writers. That's something I see very much. Did you find it difficult to be observant in the writing world?
Oh, great question. So my friend Andrea, who might be here, she and I met at a coffee meetup for SCBWI New Jersey in Teaneck. I didn't know that she lived in Teaneck. We both live in Teaneck, and we do the same thing, and we're both Orthodox. And we had instant bond, and we've gone to conferences together on Shabbos, and we had secret Shabbos in our room, and we found community. And what we found is that I think people are even in the last few years, are much more open to having events. There was an event that happened on Shabbos. It was recorded so that we could see it. They're open to having kosher food. If you tell them about your requirements, people are much more open these days to accommodating. It turns out that a lot of events, if you're Shomer Shabbos, a lot of events are on Shabbos, but by bringing them up, and mentioning it makes more people aware. And I have found that while I used to be, kind of shy about it, I'm much more outspoken about it now. I have nothing to lose.
By the way, somebody asked Judy Landau, what's your?
And if we,
sorry, is Stiefel your maiden name?
My maiden name is Fryman.
Oh, Fryman. Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah,
I hope I didn't interrupt you before. Yeah.
Related to the question. Andre and I both agree that if we're at a conference together next time and we have Kiddush in our room, we're inviting everybody. So you're invited to Kiddush.
Yeah. Oh, Esther Cook asked us, how do you find a critique group?
Good question. So I would say, depends what you're writing. If you're writing very broadly, I would go through groups like 12 by 12. And, once you bond with other authors, people just ask, I'm looking for a critique group. Or SCBW New Jersey. If you join Jewish Kidlit Mavens, you could put it out there. They have once a month you can and find out. And maybe even tonight in the chat, people are looking for critique partners. So maybe be brave, connect with each other.
That'd be great. Yeah. Here's from Hannah Majewski. Are there any specific do's and don'ts to keep in mind when writing a children's book?
That's a very big question. Do's and don'ts to keep in mind. I would go back to that slide I showed about, well, if you're not a rhymer, don't rhyme. Don't go overboard on the words. 400 words is usually the limit. Or I would say write what's coming from your heart. That's a big do. Write what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about it, chances are some child will be too. Books that make you feel something are the best. So, that's a definite big do. Do that. Do what you love most.
Okay. Here's Danielle Kaplan. How does the writing / illustration components break down? Can the author / illustrator duo submit the work together?
Great question. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention this. Don't get an illustrator to publish that's a don't. Don't get an illustrator to collaborate on your work before you send it out. That's usually if you're not an author illustrator, the publisher will choose the illustrator. Unfortunately, they will ask the author sometimes what style you like or which illustrators you like, but so far I haven't had much success in saying, I want this person, get that person. Well, with my Yafa Eliach book, I had say in it, but don't send it out as a package. Okay, because editors won't love that. But could you repeat the question exactly how it was asked?
They say, can an author, I guess maybe what she's really saying is, can you work as a duo together? You can't choose your illustrator, so to speak.
That graphic novels are in very high demand, and if you have a team, that might be a great way.
Collaborative things, I suppose. Yeah. But
in general, unless you're an author illustrator, I wouldn't submit together. I don't know maybe other authors in the chat would respond to that, but I just don't think it's not a normal way of doing things these days.
Yeah. Miriam Rosenbluth just said there is a great website called critiquematch.com. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Maybe be brave and check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andrea Rosenblum said you could also find a critique group through the SB, what is this?
UI for sure.
Yeah.
Whatever state you're in, join that chapter.
Yeah. This was a little personal here from Rena. How many rejections did you have before publication? Also, how do we, I guess there were two questions is the first that she asked.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the book.
Yeah.
So with Waka Wakala, I had like maybe 20, 30 rejections before it was accepted. And when I got accepted, every time I either scream or cry. Daddy Depot went pretty quickly. I think we had like 10 rejections. And then I have books that were rejected and never published. I have many more books that have not been published than have been published. Let's put it that way. What I love about my new agent is that she's willing to go back to some of those and help me revise them and maybe get them back into the submission process. So we'll see. Yeah.
I was thinking the author, Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter books, that was rejected by quite a few. So that hurt me, inspiration.
Some people say use them as wallpaper as like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
If you're getting rejected, I mean, you got to be in it to win it. So it's part of the process. Unfortunately, it's part of that roller coaster ride. So, yeah.
Yeah. There's a bunch. Rita also wrote, how do we join as a freelance? How do we join as a freelance resource to get started?
I think I would query. I think I would reach out to publications that you're interested in and learn how to write a good query and, pitch your work. And if they see that you're, a good writer and you have clips to show for it, writing begets writing. So query, give your credentials. I would, when I got those original books, the work for hire books, I pitched to them and they didn't accept some of my ideas. They gave me other ideas. So you never know. If you have a local paper like the Jewish Link, the Jewish Standard, those are good ways to, I don't actually think the Standard is taking unsolicited work, but the Jewish Link does. And so maybe that's a good way to get some credentials. There's all kinds of publications. For educational publishers, I would query. I would definitely query. And there are other children's magazines beyond school, and then there's Scholastic magazines too. So yeah.
There's two more questions, and then it's a wrap. Someone wrote, by the way, someone wrote, a publisher here, no thank you to submitting illustrations with your manuscript unless you're an author or illustrator. But somebody,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
No, this isn't a question. It's just somebody just made a comment. A publisher here, no thank you to submitting illustrations with your manuscript unless you're an author illustrator. But the two questions here, I'll just for the students. Allison, do you travel to promote your books? Like, I guess, do these book tours?
I think she's commenting. I think that's hopefully an editor.
Yeah.
She's saying don't submit illustrations with your manuscript. She's
yeah.
Got that. Okay.
Yeah, but but do you have? I guess do you travel to promote your books? Like do these? I guess these book tours, so to speak.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
I've done. So I haven't had world tour. I've done radio interviews. That's the farthest. I mean, I've gone to. Some people like to do book of. If they happen to be traveling, also they'll do book things. When I'm on vacation, I like to be on vacation. I've done radio interviews I had for Animal Zombies. I was in 18 cities on the radio. So, but I would love to travel. So if there's any publisher who wants to send me to travel after COVID, yeah, I'd love to. Different school visits, stuff like that, schools. I love that. Yeah.
Okay. This is what I guess Achron would be the last question we're going to ask. When you get rejected, this is for Hannah Majewski. When you get rejected, do you make changes to your book?
That's a great question. So there have been times where sometimes it's just a flat out rejection. This is not for me, or they'll say something nice, like I have something similar. I like the book, but something similar. And sometimes you'll start to see, I wasn't connecting with this character, and you'll see that kind of comment.
Yeah.
competitively. And then my agent will come back to me and say, well, what do you think about this? If they're not connecting, what is it about, something about that character that's not, you need to work on the emotional piece of this book, like find more
Mhm.
emotion on the page and really delve into the character more. So then I might go back and revise. So it really depends, and sometimes an editor will come back and say, oh, I like this. This just happened recently, a
Mhm.
nonfiction book. I like this, but please revise and resubmit. And it's called an R&R, and I've done that. Yeah. So
Oh, great. All
yeah,
right. So thank you so much. We had an enthusiastic response here. All these other comments are wonderful, wonderful presentation,
great.
fabulous.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you know,
you
I can
so
go
much.
on and
I'm
on
gonna
and on, but
group chat.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I just thank everybody here for attending, and I wish all of you a happy Hanukkah or Hanukkah, as you would try to say. And really, I think that I hope everybody really just feels just as fired up and inspired. Uh, really was a pleasure and an honor to have you here, and just wish you good luck
mm,
in your future your future endeavors. Really, yeah. Okay,
much. Thank you.
okay,
Thank you, everyone.
okay.
Happy,
All
happy,
right.
happy.
Yeah.
Take care.
Okay. Happy Hanukkah, everybody. Okay. Bye bye.